still out there. I've just got to do this on my own.
The day has finally come. The day where I'm finally able to talk about Spider-Man Homecoming. This 2017 American superhero film is based on the Marvel Comics character Spider-Man and is co-produced by Columbia Pictures and Marvel Studios, and it's distributed by Sony Pictures, and it serves as the third reboot in the film franchise of Spider-Man, and it is directed by Jon Watts, and the movie stars Tom Holland, Michael Keaton, Jon Favreau, Zendaya, Donald Glover, Tyne, Daly, Marisa Tomei, and Robert Downey Jr. And in this movie, we basically have Peter Parker coming back after the events of Civil War and is trying to re-immerse himself and balance his high school life while also being the Spider-Man hero, and also eventually coming face to face with the villain known as Vulture, which pushes him to his absolute limit to the point where he has to decide, can he still be Spider-Man? Now, I got a chance to see this movie last night and the hype was real. Like, literally the hype was real. And I could sit here and tell you about how hype the real was, but I'm not going to. But alright, so I have said this all week. I've done different discussions on people's channels, most notably Real to Real, and I told him how I think that Tom Holland is the perfect Spider-Man and he fully embodies the character of Peter Parker from the comic books, and this movie just reaffirms that. If Captain America Civil War didn't reaffirm that for you, then this film definitely should. Tom Holland is able to accurately portray what it's like to be this awkward high school Peter Parker that wants to ultimately fit in with his classmates, but is so awkward and so smart and intelligent, and then at the same time is getting used to being the superhero of Spider-Man and just trying to learn how he basically fits into this little puzzle box. And so, like I said, I think that Tom Holland portrayed him very accurately, and I like how the movie stayed focused on Peter Parker and how Peter Parker was continuously learning to overcome his challenges and overcome his limits, and I really like that. And then the other big part to this was they promised that this was going to be like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and it was going to have that kind of same style to it. Well, I really did enjoy that, because not only did we get to see Tom Holland, we got to see him interact with Zendaya's character. We also got to see him interact with Tony Revolori's character of Flash Thompson. And see, what I like is how they changed up Flash Thompson's character. This Flash Thompson isn't your typical high school jock. This guy is Peter Parker's rival and classmate, but this time he's more of a smart Flash Thompson. Laura Harrier played Liz. It was good to see him interact with Liz, and it was supposedly his love interest in the movie, and I like the way that they focused in on that and made it just as awkward as it is, because we all know with teenagers it's awkward when you try to fall in love. But the one thing that I absolutely have to spotlight is Jacob Batalon and how they focused in on the relationship between him and his best friend Ned. He is Peter's number 2 guy, the guy in the chair, and I'm so glad that they used Ned's character the way that they did. Now, one of the other things that I think was awesome in here is Michael Keaton as Adrian Toomes, or the Vulture. Now, one thing that I love and that we all have anonymously agreed on is that we love the Marvel villains, but Marvel always has a habit of not fleshing their villains out completely. They're kind of one-sided or one note. Well, I don't know if it's because of the team up ultimately and because of how much pressure was riding on this, but I felt like Adrian Toomes was accurately represented from the comic book. But not only that, they actually focused in on him and his motives and his goals, and as to why he is becoming the Vulture and why he is trying to do this. Jon Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. respectively playing Harold Happy Hogan and Tony Stark. I'm so glad to see both of these guys come into the MCU with this Spider-Man deal, because I was wondering were they gonna go with the whole father kind of relationship, and they did. Happy would basically be like his uncle figure who cares about him but gets annoyed with him from time to time, but ultimately looks out for him. And Tony Stark is just this overarching father figure to him, and is trying to tell him, I want you to be better than me. I want you to ultimately succeed at your goals, and that you have to understand that this suit is not what makes you Spider-Man. Spider-Man. What makes you Spider-Man is what's on the inside of you. Getting to some of my negatives of the film, which, believe me, aren't that many. The only really negatives that I would possibly have is the villains, the side villains, I should say. Now, there's a portion of the movie, and I'm not going to spoil it, but, you know, from we've seen in the trailer, there are 2 shockers. Well, that's the problem. There are 2 shockers. I personally think there should have maybe been 1 shocker, and maybe he would be like that general, and in a way, he was kind of used like that general, but I felt like almost we were going to have an Amazing Spider-Man 2 situation or an Amazing Spider-Man 3 situation when we had all these villains keep popping up. I'm like, okay, give him day-to-day street villains to deal with. That's fine. We need to have that. You need to show Tom Holland in action as Spider-Man is doing his neighborly, heroic duties. That's fine, but don't give him these big, powerful guys, because there and again, we want to keep the focus on Vulture, and they did for the most part, and it worked out, but I still like that first shocker maybe shouldn't have been the shocker. Maybe they should have just stuck with the shocker that we got towards the end of the film. But other than that, that's really the only negative I had about this film. Other than that, I thought it was a spot-on film, and I highly recommend you go check out Spider-Man. And hey, do check this out in IMAX 3D, because I got to check it out in IMAX 3D, and it did really look cool, and it did feel like it benefited from seeing it in IMAX 3D, especially if you want to see the high-flying, web-slinging action of Spider-Man swinging from building to building in different parts of the town. So guys, with that being said, my review for this film, I am giving this movie a solid 10 out of a 10. This was, again, my Spider-Man movie. Whenever I go back and want to watch Spider-Man now, this is my definitive Spider-Man. If someone asks, hey, what's your favorite Spider-Man movie? Spider-Man Homecoming. Until we see the sequel, which could be even better than this one, Spider-Man Homecoming is my favorite Spider-Man movie. Again, they fleshed out the villain. They kept the story on Peter Parker. Tom Holland was on his A game portraying Spider-Man to the T. I still think his friend Ned was on par. I like how they used Ned throughout the film. Adrian Toomes, again, I love how they used the villain character and how he was actually fleshed out. Happy Hogan and Tony Stark, I love how they were both in the movie, but they didn't take over the movie. This was ultimately Tom Holland's movie. I like how they went with the whole bait and switch thing with Zendaya's character, and I also love how they used Laura Harris's character of Liz and how she wasn't a stereotypical love interest. She actually had some layers to her as well, and the twist here is gonna really blow your head off. But guys, what do you think of Spider-Man Homecoming? Have you seen it? Do you plan to check it out this weekend? Hey, do you really think that Tom Holland is the perfect Spider-Man? Let me know down in the comment section below what you think about all of these questions. As always, thank you so much for checking out the video, and make sure you check out my other MCU videos that I just dropped. I did a discussion on Will Red Skull appear in Avengers Infinity War, and I did another discussion talking about whether or not one of the Avengers will die in the upcoming Avengers Infinity War. Thank you as always, and remember to become a savage, stay a savage, and peace out, y'all. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I almost forgot to talk about Hot Aunt May, Marisa Tomei. I liked how they used her in the film as well, and like I said, hashtag Hot Aunt May. Y'all have a good one now.